Right, so this is Fall 2 reporting certification. In this training, we discuss the submission requirements, the certification errors, and the reports. Remember, this training is not specific to data submission or the data population, but more so in the entire reporting process for Fall 2. And so the target audience is those of you that are the LEA data coordinators, those specifically using your student information systems to submit data to CalPads. This data collection does not need any data submitted from your SEDS or special education data system. So this is again specifically for those SIS data coordinators. And then those of you who are new to CalPAS, this is a good training. This is a training that you want to take every year. One, to get a refresher, a reminder, and we introduce new concepts or new additions in the Fall 2 reporting certification. If you're brand new, you do want to watch the self-paced videos for the file types that we'll discuss that are required. There's a self-paced video for each file type. And then you want to, we bring it all together in the live version of the data population, which we previously presented, and we're working to get a copy of the recording on YouTube as well. So this is the training sequence, and I've mentioned some of the previous trainings already. Highlighted is where we are at. In bold is reporting and certification. There is an advanced session for those users who have successfully submitted CalPAS for several years, and it's a condensed version of what we're going to talk about today. And then the data population, also listed in the colored square, is a primer for this training. If you're brand new, the data population would have been a good training to take, because we go into a little bit more detail about the submission process, and the reports and the certification process are the result of that submission process. And then, so all our trainings are designed with specific objectives. And one of the objectives for today's training is we want you to be able to identify the staff, the course, the post-secondary data that's collected for this Fall 2 submission. In doing so, you'll be able to determine the requirements for each student, staff member, and course that should be reported. They vary depending on the situation, the course, the teacher, and the students. And you want to be able to perform the submission and the approval process using online maintenance or batch file uploads, so that you can meet the deadline. And in doing so, this will require you to resolve certification errors, which we will demonstrate some, and give you pointers on the more frequently occurring errors. And hopefully you also, along the way, familiarize yourself with some of the required documents. All right, let's talk about how we're going to present the training. As always, we begin with the overview. It's basic background of Fall 2 reporting. We talk about some general concepts that are mentioned in other trainings. Then we go into a little bit of the submission details, not much because we're focusing on the certification process, but you do need to know what needs to be submitted in order to certify. Then we're going to talk about the certification errors and reports. That's generally the 2 points of the process, is resolving errors and then reviewing reports to make sure that your data is accurate. And then we'll conclude with a wrap up, just kind of hammering home the key points that we talked about, answering any final questions, and telling you about resources and future trainings offered by us or the CDE. So this is the overview. Let's talk about some key concepts and background information. So here's an overview of the data collection, right? You're going to submit your files. The data is entered into CalPADS ODS. Once it's there, you're going to review the CalPADS reports. That's very general. That's like your kindergarten explanation. We all know it's not that easy. But the reason why we do this, the reason why we do it for each submission, is that there are legislative reasons, right? And so this data is used in part because every school needs to present or create a school accountability report card, and some of the data is used for your SARCs. Then the Every Student Succeeds Act, the ESSA, requires some of this data, all right, in part to identify inexperienced or misassigned teachers. And then the U.S. Department of Education's Office of Civil Rights, the OCR, uses the data to monitor and make sure that each state, and specifically California, meets our obligation to our EL students. And then, of course, the California Teaching Credential uses the data in Fall 2 because they actually do the process of identifying misassigned teachers. So there's some key dates that you want to be mindful of, right? So the first one is October 7th. That's Census Day. And you're familiar with that because it's the Census Day for Fall 1 as well. And what that means is all the data reported is reflective of Census Day. By the time the deadline comes, we're talking about 4 months prior, right? 4 or 5 months prior. So you just want to keep in mind that your student population, the courses that they're taking at the time of the submission, is not what you're reporting. You're reporting what it was in October. The official submission window is currently underway, but it will end on March 5th, 2021. That's the deadline, and there is no amendment window. So it's coming fast. We know that many of you are finishing Fall 1. So you essentially have 5 weeks to get the data in. So just want to be aware of that. If you haven't begun already, remember that your Fall 2 data doesn't affect Fall 1. There's no reason to delay. And so who are the staff members involved in this data collection? Where are your resources? How do you get this information, right? So you're going to play a prominent role as a CalPAS data coordinator. Not only are you submitting the data, you're going to have to lead the team, and you know this, in getting the data, right? When there's an error or there's missing data, you have to get somebody to get involved. You have to motivate them to research and provide data that's required. And not always is that easy, right? So you have to communicate with the local school site, make sure that they populate the data in the student information system completely and correctly. You're going to have to refer to your human resources because we're not just talking about students now. We're talking about staff members, their credentials, their FTE. So that's going to come from your human resources, right? Those doing the hiring of the staff. And then you have other staff that are going to be involved in Fall 2, in particular your EL program staff, because we're wanting to make sure that staff members are reported as providing the correct services, that students receiving services are reported correctly, so on and so forth. Potentially those in your curriculum department, because you want to make sure that courses and their content are reported correctly, but also your levels, right? If it's an honors course or a GATE course, or if it's IB or AP, all that you want to have reported correctly. And so the general information that is going to be reported is categorized as staff, course, English learner, and post-secondary, right? And so you're going to be reporting staff demographic and assignments. You're going to be reporting of that. You're going to be focused on certificated staff, teachers, admin, and pupil services. The course enrollment is going to be the course sections that were provided to your students who were enrolled on Census Day. And then your EL services, it's going to be EL services by course, EL services that are received by the students, and EL services that are provided by the staff. And then your post-secondary status. This is the post-secondary status of CTE completers. Remember, post-secondary for special ed is in end of year 4. And if you have information, possibly the California Partnership Academy. And so just generally, the staff and courses reported will be those of certificated staff providing instruction to students on Census Day. Students enrolled on Census Day should be reported. They could be off track as long as they were enrolled on Census Day. Their course sections should be reported. As far as post-secondary status, again, that's going to be your CTE completers who were enrolled at any time the previous academic year. Not necessarily completing CTE last year, but just enrolled. Kyron will talk about that in much more detail. And so we just have a question to kind of warm you guys up. Hopefully you're paying a little bit of attention and my voice isn't droning out. What order should the Fall 2 course files be submitted? Is there an order? And if there is an order, in what order should they be submitted? All right, and then Larnie gives the full complete answer, everybody. The staff demographic, the staff assignment, course, student course section, and post-secondary can be sent at any time, and that's correct. And so that's just what we want to convey here on this slide, right? You have to first establish your staff. You can't submit staff assignments or courses for staff if they do not have a demographic record for your LEA. Right? So you start with the staff demographic, then you go into staff assignment, and you're basically telling us what credentials your staff members have, their FTE, yada, yada, yada. Kyron talks about that. Then you got your course section, where you're telling us this is the teacher for this course is online, this course is not online. So you go into course content details, right? And then once you have your staff and your courses reported, you can then enroll the students in the course or associate your students to the courses they were receiving on census day through the student course section. And then as Larnie detailed, the post-secondary status can be submitted at any time. And that's because it has nothing to do with census day or the students or staff members active this year. The post-secondary status is the results of students who completed their academic education last year or their secondary education last year. Hopefully many of these students are continuing their education. And then I would be remiss if I didn't point out that the SASS, the course, the student course section, and the PSTS are full replacement files. There's a definition in the CalPAD CFS Word document for what a full replacement file is, right? Basically, any record with the operational key submitted in the file is going to replace all the existing records that you've previously reported. So if you have, if you look at the operational key here for the SASS, it's School of Assignment Academic Year ID. So if I have one teacher on which I reported incorrectly or I didn't report and I submit a file with just that one teacher's record, all the other teachers I previously reported with the same school of assignment and academic year will be replaced with that one record. And so with these file types, you want to make sure that you're submitting complete data sets as you submit them. If you get close to the deadline and you have a minor adjustment, you do have online maintenance, which will accept a single edition. But just remember, the first thing you do is if you submit a record via batch file and you look at your snapshot or you look and all your teachers or courses all of a sudden are missing, you probably did a full replacement feature. You just go back in your SIS and extract all that data and submit it again. It's usually not that difficult to manage once you're in the swing of it, but it's something to look out for. Okay, so one of the key things that was introduced last year is assignment monitoring, right? And the purpose of this slide, or what we want to convey, is that there's not a single emphasis on a specific file type. The assignment monitoring data uses all four of the Fall 2 file types related to this year, right? And so the demographic information, the gender, the experience, the education of your staff is used in assignment monitoring. Then your teachers' job classifications, what they're certificated or credentialed to teach, as well as how they've been assigned, comes from staff assignment file. And then the courses that they're that they are teaching. So you get a marriage between what they're authorized to teach, or what you're telling us they're authorized to teach, and then what they're actually teaching. And then, of course, are the appropriate students receiving the curriculum. The students' demographic comes into play, because when you're trying to see if inexperienced teachers are assigned to urban or low income areas or low income schools, that comes into play. And so there's not a specific emphasis on one file. All the information is used to paint the picture. And so there's three kind of categories that the state of California uses to define equity data under the ESSA as it pertains to teaching, right? And so ineffective teachers, the definitions here, but that's not used for information from CalPADS, right? They typically can be teachers that are misassigned, which that would come from data, but there are local ways to identify ineffective teachers. But I'm sorry, your ineffective and your out of field teachers, you know, are determined from the CTC credentialing data. Your inexperienced teachers come from directly from CalPADS, and that's one of the reasons why you want to report The staff demographic is a teacher with 2 years or less is inexperienced. Now, the ineffective and out-of-field teachers can be determined in part by the CalSASS process. All right, and so that's when we say assignment monitoring. You know, the first part of the process is submitting your data to CalPads. Then there's the CalSASS process in which the CTE can review the data and the staff members' credentials. And then the last part is for you to justify any placements that are deemed questionable, right? And so your ineffective and out-of-field teachers can be identified as a result of this process. And so a big change, we've been talking about it since the summer, is that charter schools are no longer omitted from having credentialed teachers or reporting credentialed teachers, right? And so now, since July 1st, all your teachers must have a seat. So if you're at a charter school or there's a charter school in your LEA that doesn't have credentialed teachers, you can get a certificate of clearance from the CTC, and that teacher should be reported, that demographic record, that staff assignment. This is just general information. The second bullet point is that by 2025, all charter school teachers must be credentialed. So, you know, they have 5 years to get their things together if they're not certificated. But, you know, that's more administration. That's less of our concern.